Hello everybody, my name is Oren Halvani and I'm going to talk about authorship verification in the absence of explicit features and thresholds. So I will just skip the outline and dive in. So, as we all know, information retrieval is a well-studied field with lots of media search applications ranging from images, video, speech, music, text retrieval, and many more. Now, regarding text, many approaches have been proposed so far in order to enhance the retrieval process at a more fine-grained level. So the most important technique, I think, is document classification, which helps us somehow to identify some properties of the text, such as language, genre, topic, sentiment, readability, or now in the age of the era of fake news, the degree of underlying facts in the text. Now, in the recent years, we can observe that researchers tend also to investigate advanced techniques in order to take the writing style of documents also into account. And one application that is possible here is to group the retrieved documents according to the authors. So one approach that can be used here is authorship verification. I will just use the abbreviation AV, it's short. So the goal of AV is to judge if two documents, D1 and D2, have been written by the same person. In terms of information retrieval, it could be, for example, that D1 is the query, while D2 is the retrieved document. And to achieve this goal, almost all existing AV methods use a variety of stylistic markers that are needed to approximate the model, the writing style model. In terms of machine learning, we refer them to by features. So, if we follow this approach where we use explicit defined features, we will see a number of questions and problems here. So, for example, since we know that many features exist, such as character engrams, function words, readability metrics, and so on, the first question is which features should we use? And even if we combine them, it's also a question which group of features should we use? So, besides that, some features have also parameters. So, for instance, character engrams have the n parameter. So, which n should we choose? Should we choose, for example, 2, 3, 50, whatever? So, it's just one parameter, which is important to know before we can extract the features from the text. Another parameter is that some AV methods also tend to use not the entire features found in the documents, but just the top X features, frequent features. So again, which X is it? Do we use the top 100, 1000 features, and so on? So it's another additional parameter, and there are quite more. Furthermore, some features, such as post-text, cannot be extracted directly from the text. So first we have to transform the text into some other representation, and then we can extract post-text or other things, like semantic relations and so on. So this process to annotate the text is error-prone. It's not always perfect. And that means that we have a biased feature space here. So the question here is, how should we deal with this biased feature space? Now, and another issue is language. So some features are bound to a specific feature, specific language, such as function words. So we cannot use English function words on German text, right? And for this, of course, we can use linguistic resources. But the question here is, how reliable are these resources? Because we need some expert that really constructed these resources. And, you know, it's kind of trust that we have here to understand if we really can trust these specific linguistic resources, especially if we don't have knowledge about the given language. So, scaling is another problem. Now, since even when we extract raw strings, raw features from the text, we can pass them into a machine learning algorithm, because the majority of machine learning algorithms need numerical feature vectors. So, okay, we can construct numerical feature vectors, but the question is how, which strategy do we use? Do we use absolute frequencies? Do we use relative frequencies? And if we use relative frequencies, which strategy do we use? For example, we can take the function word and, for instance, and divide it by the number of all function words. But why shouldn't we take the text length instead, or the number of all available words, and so on? So a couple of strategies that we can use even for relative frequencies. So another interesting question is feature importance. So, you know, in neural networks, for example, you do some feature weighting, or the algorithm make the feature weighting by themselves, and then they have some kind of feature selection. It's built in the net. That works pretty fine for multi-class problems, but this is not the case here, because we have here a one-class problem. So if you have one class, how are you able to weight features? I'm not sure if this is even possible. So, besides this feature engineering process, we have also another problem. Because since we are dealing with a recognition, not a classification problem here, we have to recognize the target class, which is the known author, A. So, we have to adjust the boundary. Oh, you can see the pointer. Anyhow, you cannot see the boundary of the known author. You have to adjust it somehow to accept as more as documents of the author, unseen documents of course, but at the same time reject anything else which doesn't belong to this author. And this is quite challenging. So how should we choose an optimal threshold here? Now, common strategies are to use manual definitions of features, of thresholds. This has been done in several papers, but this is quite tough. Another more sophisticated approach is to use some training corpora and hope that the learned features and thresholds, note it's not only one, it could be several thresholds, will generalize over the evaluation corpora. So our question is here, can we discard off? So the feature engineering process and all these parameters and stuff, and also the thresholds. Okay, so the explicit definition, can we avoid this? Let's see. So let me introduce our method, OCAV. OCAV stands for one-class compression-based authorship verifier. And the basic idea behind OCAV is the Kolmogorov complexity. You see the Kolmogorov complexity of an object in our scenario text is a sort of a measure that is, it measures the computational resources to model a specific, or to represent a specific text. Yeah? So if we look on a text one here, for example, AB, 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 so we can compress it into 4 times AB, right? The other text is random, so we cannot compress it further. Now, natural language texts are somewhere in between. That means that we don't have completely redundancy here, but also it's not a random string. So we have some sort of redundancy, but it's somewhere in the middle. So one drawback of the Kolmogorov complexity is that it's uncomputable. Anyhow, it turns out that compression algorithms can approximate it to some degree. And we will use the Kolmogorov complexity, or actually the compression algorithms, in order to model the writing style of the authors. So, let me remind again the goal. We are trying to verify, to solve a given verification problem. Now, a verification problem looks here that we have an unknown document of someone who claims to be a specific author, and then we have known documents of this specific author. And for evaluation purposes, of course, the ground truth, if it's matched or not, yes or no. So, the first step is to build some data representation before we can use the method. So first, we have the unknown document, U. It will be compressed into the representation X. And then we have the known documents K1, K2, and so on, and they will be compressed into Y1, Y2, and so on. So note that the compressed documents are now represented as bytes, streams, or just sequences of bytes. Now, for compression, we use the prediction by partial matching. It's actually not a single algorithm, it's a family of algorithms. There are many, many implementations. They are very interesting because they have found out to be best performing for natural language text. Now, we use a specific variant because we don't need several, we just need one compression algorithm, and we use the PPMD, where D refers to the order of the compression model. So, once we have the representations, the compressed texts, we need to compute similarities to understand how similar are they to each other. So, in traditional bag of features approaches, we can use a bunch of metrics like distance functions, Manhattan, Euclidean distance, and so on, or similarity functions like the cosine similarity, for instance. However, this is not the case here. Here we don't have any numerical feature vectors. We just have the raw text, or actually the compressed representation of them. So we need another strategy, and what we can choose here are compression measures. So there are not many compression measures existing, so as far as we know, it should be something like 4 or 5 measures, which are mentioned in the literature. And we have already shown in the previous work that the compression-based cosine tends to outperform them all in terms of natural language texts, because they also can be used, of course, for other domains. So the formula is quite straightforward. all you have to know is just this CX function, which is just denotes just the length of the compressed document. That's all. So this is the algorithm. It's just one slide. So we first calculate the dissimilarities between the unknown document, the compressed document, X, and all the other known documents, other compressed documents, Y1, Y2, and so on. We do this with the cosine, compression-based cosine, so the CBC function. So then we save the smallest dissimilarity value, and denoted by D1, and then we calculate from the nearest neighbor of the unknown document dissimilarities for all the remaining known documents, compressed documents. And this is it. Then we just we have the decision here that we accept the authorship if D1 is smaller than the average distance of the known author, and we reject it otherwise. That's the algorithm. So let's have a look at the evaluation. We compiled 8 corpora, spread it across 8 languages like French, Dutch, Polish, Spanish, and so on. And we have several genres like news articles, emails, novel excerpts, and even cooking recipes. So we have split them into training and test sets. There's some statistics here about the average length, the average number of documents, that's the 4th column, the average length of the known and the average length of the unknown documents, the columns behind. So now in order to establish some challenging baselines, we could also of course use a random baseline, but that's not so challenging. We decided to implement a number of existing AV approaches, where 2 of them are the current state-of-the-art. That's the GI, general imposters, and the other one is the improved imposters, both from other researchers. Besides that, we also used the CNG, the proximity-based one-class classification. It was the winner of the PAN competition in 2013. Also, the profile-based authorship verification of Stamatos. It was outperforming all the participants in the competition of 2013, the PAN competition, sorry, I forgot to mention. And the GLAD system, running on lightweight authorship detection system, which performed among the top 4 in 2015 of this competition. In addition to that, we also decided to use our previous approach, COAV, which is mentioned in the 6. It works quite similar to OCAV, however, it requires a training procedure. So, given the training corpora, we trained each baseline according to the training procedure, which is mentioned in the original paper. So, we used as a performance measure, the AUC, which is not the very best performance measure, but it has been used by the majority of existing works. It has several drawbacks, which we will mention in a new paper we are just working right now. However, it's still more robust than others, like, for example, the accuracy measure. You see, the accuracy is just a single point on the rock curve, okay, and it's not so stable measure here. Okay, so these are the results. We have OCAV and the 3rd column and all the remaining baselines. And as you can see from the last row, it's the average of all AUCs over the corpora. You can see that OCAV isn't far away from the state-of-the-art methods. It's quite similar, and it outperforms the 3 other baselines. And you can also observe that our previous approach was actually outperforming all the other methods, including the new method. However, it's not so significantly high. But something else you can observe from this table, if you take a closer look on the single accuracies in each column, you can see that there is not a huge significant drop regarding OCAV in comparison to the other baselines. I think we can explain it by this, that OCAV has an individual parameter, while this is not the case for the other methods. So they all use a global parameter here. And that's why it can be adapted more better to the language and to the topic, genre, and so on, besides that. So, note that OCAV never have seen a single training corpus, in contrast to the other methods. So it's just seen the evaluation corpora, since we don't have any training. Okay. Let's have a look at the benefits. So OCAV yields, as I said, competitive and also stable results across several languages, 8 languages. And it's very, very easy to re-implement. It requires less than 20 lines of code, You only need a compression library. If you don't have anyone, that will take a bit longer. But they are for the most relevant programming languages such as C++, C#, Python, Java, and so on. So you have the ability to use them. Now, that's why I intentionally not shared the GitHub code, because there is no need for that, I think, for 20 lines. Actually, what you need to do is just to calculate, to implement the formula and the calculation of the known distances, and I think that's pretty all. And the method is quite fast. It processes a single verification case in less than a second. I think it should be something like 200 milliseconds, depends. And it's quite practical, as we have used it in several real forensic scenarios, for instance, to detect insurance fraud. Okay, now of course we'll also have some limits. So the limitations are that OCAM needs at least 2 known documents before we can perform the verification. If there is only one, then we have to split it into 2 halves. And the minimum text length should be something around 1.5 kilobytes. It's, something like, depends on the language, but it's something like, I think, 10, 15 sentences, something like that. Yeah, and since most of the work is delegated to the compression algorithm, in future work we should investigate what exactly is going on there. We cannot say right now exactly what kind of style is modeled here, or even if the style is completely modeled here. At the moment, we just know that there are some substrings with some sort of feature selection in this compressed representation, and but we have to investigate it further. So another issue is the robustness. We have to address this also in future work to see, to understand in which conditions the method fails, and of course it fails in some scenarios. Yeah, and furthermore, lastly, actually, we experimented also with more sophisticated approaches, such as autoencoders and RNNs, but initial results have shown that they're not performed quite well. It's most probably because we have very limited amount of known documents here, so that could be the answer, but we're still trying to investigate that. Well then, thank you very much, and the slides are online, by the way. Thank you.